Pom Poko, 1994 animated film from Studio Ghibli, tells the story of a community of anthropomorphized raccoons or raccoon dogs, tanukis, not native to Japan, whose natural habitat outside of Tokyo gets progressively more disrupted by development of a new town. The raccoons get together and learn the magic of shapeshifting into objects, other creatures, and even humans to try and interrupt those operations and save their homes. So the premise sounds absolutely ridiculous, but 5 minutes in, I was having a blast already because of how much humor is involved. And not just situational or wordplay, but purely visually speaking, even. The style in which the raccoons are drawn is simply delightful. There's that thing in the film where they look normally when around humans, but as soon as they're alone, they start to walk on 2 feet and their appearance changes. And those transition scenes between are simply amazing. Similar stuff for the shapeshifting things. In general, the hand-drawn animation is just beautiful, and I think it's perhaps one of the more lively Ghibli films I've seen so far. There's just so much life and joy in every scene. A fair word of warning, the film does also get pretty fucking weird at times. The raccoon's antics draw heavily on Japanese lore, shrines, spirits, and spectres, and if you're completely unfamiliar with those elements, you may think to yourself, what is going on in here, multiple times during the film. I'm quite familiar with a lot of those elements, so for me, the way that Pom Poko takes a lot of the things traditionally more associated with Japanese horror and folk tales and turns them into something funny and joyous was great. There is a sequence towards the end, a spectre parade, which turns all of that to 11 and doesn't let go for a good couple of minutes. I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition in terms of tone. And speaking of that, I have to say that the movie feels much happier than it perhaps should for such a sad cautionary tale about the impact of urbanization on nature. The humor covers how serious the things presented actually are. And I think that was done mainly for the sake of the children audiences. But adults do have more than a few chances to look past that and notice that apart from being a silly comedy about a bunch of raccoons, the movie has a strong environmental message, and all the more strong that it doesn't really present individual humans as antagonists. I think if it were a Western story, you would probably have some sort of development manager that would be made the main villain and the raccoons would be mainly getting back at him. Here, there's nothing of the sort. We don't really interact with humans so much as humanity as a whole. The civilization is not a clear villain, it's more of an unstoppable, incomprehensible force of nature that the raccoons don't know how and cannot deal with. And by using this angle, I think the movie makes its point all the better because we sympathize with the raccoons without necessarily entering that cognitive dissonance of having to be against people. And also, I do think that apart from the environmental message, Pom Poko is also about how urbanization changes the lives of people, of rural communities used to nature and farming and in general a simpler way of life. And with the advent of big cities encroaching on their space, have to adjust that way of life and try to fit in somehow with the new reality. I know that was a big topic in Japan in 1960s and 1970s, and I think it's clear that the film taps into that. And it does it well as pretty much everything else. Pom Poko ends up being a great cautionary / nostalgic tale about how progress strips us humans from our old ways of life. But it's also dressed up as this wonderful, fun, and cheerful animation about animals that I think audiences of all ages can and will love. Great movie.